Welcome back to Podcast Recovery. We're your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
Podcast Recovery is a forerunner in digital accessible addiction recovery support. We provide ease and convenience to any and all seeking a message of recovery and hope. By broadcasting the story of recovery addicts, we act as a complement to all other recovery services. We exist to create a global foundation platform so that any addict may hear a message of strength and hope. We contribute education and awareness by highlighting the diversity in the lives of recovering addicts to show that one addict helping another truly works. Today we are joined by our friend Herb. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well.
Where are you from, Herb?
East Coast. I've actually lived a little bit of everywhere. So,
all right, that'll work.
Yeah.
When were you first introduced to recovery?
The first time I got introduced to recovery was probably about 23 years old.
And how long ago was that?
48 now, so I'm getting kind of old.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Good God. And how much clean time do you have?
I have 11 years currently.
Fantastic.
Cool.
All right. Well, with all that out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to you for your experience, strength, and hope.
All right. Thank you very much. Gosh, I never know where to start, but I guess the easiest place to start is when I first got introduced to drugs, I was young. I think the first time I experienced anything was probably around sixth grade, something like that. It was really normal stuff, skipping school, smoking cigarettes with somebody, drinking beers and smoking pot. And, if it wasn't fun, I probably wouldn't have kept doing it if I didn't feel a part of. If I hadn't had the desire to kind of fit in, I probably wouldn't have continued doing it. I think that the biggest thing that I found at that age using drugs was that it enabled me to kind of forget all the things that were bothering me as a young kid, because I had basically come from a broken family, a divorced family.
Yep.
Got transplanted from the north into the south at a really young age, but I never really felt like I fit in because, I kind of had like a New Jersey accent and I was living in North Carolina, but that was a little different.
Yeah. Not Jersey Shore is not the Carolina Shore.
Definitely not. Although I think the Carolina Shore is much prettier.
Yes.
That's just my opinion. So, from there, it really started to have an effect on me in school. I noticed that I didn't really pay attention as much in class. I was thinking more about like, okay, what are we going to do after school? Who are we going to hang out with? But like I said, at that point, it was still a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
That escalated to the point that by the time I was in 8th grade, I got expelled for drug paraphernalia. Actually,
Nice.
Didn't have drugs, but everything that you needed, I had.
Nice.
And apparently in that school system, they frown upon that type of thing.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to do that.
That's the far left of the Bible Belt. So yeah.
Yeah. So that after that event, I got transferred into a school that's in a larger city. And once that happened, I started meeting more and more people. It was a much bigger community in the school. Fast forward just a hair. The high school that I went to had like 2,000 students. So it was easy to disappear into the crowd.
Yeah.
It was easier to skip school. Nobody really paid attention to what was going on. You could show up high and nobody cared.
Yep.
Noticed really. Things just kept getting worse, really. I got introduced to different drugs. Like I said, it started with just drinking beer and smoking pot. By the time I got into high school, I was introduced to LSD. I was introduced to cocaine, pills, of course, because of how accessible they are with kids. Back then, everybody's parents, still had, whatever they used for the last injury they had was still the leftovers were in the medicine cabinet.
That was before like the Oxys days, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. God, don't get me started on that. Oxys kind of like lit the fuse, I think, on what's really going on. Back then, people's parents might have had like Percocets or something like that. They might, mom might have some like Valiums there to help her calm down after
Oh, happy pills.
Yeah,
Happy
you know,
pills.
you might go to the dentist, you know, and come home with Vicodin, like you said, but it wasn't really, you know, you didn't open anybody's cabinet and be like, hey, there's morphine sulfate in here, you know.
There's some Dilaudid.
Exactly. You know, that was pretty rare, you know.
Yeah.
But ironically, you know, you said Dilaudid. It's like one of the first drugs I ever figured out that if you mix it with alcohol, it increases its effectiveness exponentially, and that was phenobarbital. Mm-hmm. And nobody, like, I don't know a whole lot of people that are into, like, you know, when you say benzos, they're like, oh, Xanax. I know what you're talking about. I'm like, no, I'm a little older, you know.
Yeah.
So,
before the Xanny days.
Right. But you know, like I said, these are the things I share with a lot of my sponsees that in the beginning, of course, you know, you were going to dances. You were, I'm going to date myself a little bit here. You were going to arcades, you know what I mean, and hanging out with people. Yeah, you know, this is the game systems we had were like the Commodore 64 computer and Pong. Oh my God, you had to be like real high to enjoy Pong. Trust me,
I'm sure. So,
but you know, being able to there was a huge social aspect to drug use at that point, you know, and like I said, you know, you wanted to fit in, you wanted to be part of the in crowd. I know that sounds so cliche to say, but it's kind of true. And I think that's universal, you know, no matter how old you are, like kids in high school today still are faced with that wanting to fit in, wanting to be like everybody else, not wanting to be that one kid that, we're not going to invite, you know, Eric to the party because he doesn't smoke pot and he's kind of like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So even if you weren't really interested, you would. And and that kind of hurt me because I'd meet, you know, like I said, if I met you two guys at a party and you guys were doing acid, I'd be like, yeah, I do acid. I lie, you know, and that was kind of the you know, having 11 years clean, I really looked at addiction. You know what I mean? And like, okay, what does that really, really mean to me? Where did this really get its start? You know, prior to the show starting, you know, we were talking about like other, you know, areas that addiction can pop up. But I look back at like, you know, I stole money to go to arcades, you know, like I stole from my mom so that I'd have, you know, it wasn't a lot of money, but maybe it's like $5 in quarters, but a video game was 25 cents. So that kind of went a long way, you know. I would steal money at school concession stands. Like maybe there was like a baseball game and they were silly enough to let me like run the cash register. I started stealing so that I could continue to go to the arcade.
Stealing from the booster club.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
You know, so like these behaviors that I had of like, you know, if something made me feel good and I enjoyed it, I was going to, you know, whatever I had to do to get more of that. So I kind of look at that, you know, I've done a couple of speaking engagements in the past and, last August, I believe, I spoke somewhere and it was with a large group of people and they were kind of shocked because one of the things I brought up was like, you know, sex, you know, I mean, like at a very young age, I realized that, hey, there were certain parts of my body that I really enjoyed touching, you know what I mean? And this was young, you know what I mean? Like, so that exploration led to like, you know, literally, I think I was addicted to it. You know, when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, you know, there was, I didn't even know what I was doing really. I just enjoyed the feeling. I like the, look at what I know now. I enjoyed the endorphin rush. I love the dopamine dump that it gave me. You know, so I have to recognize that I think I was born this way. I don't think, you know, that I got, you know, I met some people that are like, oh, well, I got prescribed this and it made me an addict. And I'm like, you know, maybe I'm not here to like, you know, talk about their experience at all. But like, I knew from the very beginning, you know, that if I really enjoyed something, you know, and I have a good dear friend of mine that the way he says it is, you know, he's addicted to more. You know, that's what his addiction is really all about, is that once he finds something he likes that makes him feel a certain way, he just wants as much of it as he can possibly get. Yeah. So by the time I got into high school and things started to escalate, I think the first time I tried, you know, intravenous drugs was like at 19. I got introduced to Dilaudid. And, you know, they weren't cheap. You know, at 19 years old, I was like, how am I going to be able to afford to do this every day? You know, I found ways to do it every day, you know, and they weren't legal ways, you know. So I went from, I'm going to be all over the place just a little bit. You know, when I was talking about like being a young kid and getting introduced to drugs, like in grade school, you know, I was a Cub Scout. You know what I mean? I like literally, they can't see me. Unfortunately, your listeners can't see me because you would probably shake your head and be like, the dude's covered in tattoos.
Yeah, you're one of the least likely people to point out a Cub Scout.
Right. But, I was brought up to know right from wrong, and I had, a good idea of what I did not want to be, But, once I experienced Dilaudid, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted more of that. So I had no problem, selling drugs. I had no problem, doing other things, that.
Sadly, there's no drug use merit badge.
Yeah, well, I definitely would have gotten that one. So, but ironically, I think it's been beneficial throughout my drug use history, that I did get my first aid merit badge because I've had to do CPR on quite a few people.
Yeah.
And, I'm 4 for 4. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. But, once I actually tried narcotics, it was the fun stopped. You know what I mean? I didn't care really that much about smoking pot. I was definitely an alcoholic my whole life. No matter, it just mixed well with whatever the hell I was on. Yeah. I even had older people, much older than me, tell me, "Hey, you shouldn't mix this drug with alcohol." Well, of course I did because, it's like, why in the world are they telling me? Not to shoot heroin and drink vodka. There must be a good reason. I want to see why,
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm sorry.
They're good.
But, I immediately, would always mix things that people told me not to, because I wanted to see why they were telling me no.
Yeah. Don't touch the fire. It's hot.
Right. How hot could it be? You just don't know how to touch fire, man.
Not touching it right.
Exactly. Going from there, I got introduced to crack cocaine. So it was really kind of strange because I would go back and forth between using Dilaudid and using cocaine. And I shouldn't say using cocaine because it wasn't, I was smoking crack. Friday night, I would get a paycheck. At the age that I was actually making decent money. I get a paycheck of like $500, by Monday morning, I was broke, I had a girlfriend at the time who had a young son. And, that didn't work out because, she was trying to raise a kid and she wasn't an addict. She was like kind of a normal person where she would just smoke some pot once in a while.
Casually smoke crack.
Yeah. No, she never smoked. She never did anything like that. It was like, I was actually kind of surprised that it took as long for that relationship to dissolve as it did. But, that was, probably should have been one of my first wake-up calls. I mean, in my late teens and early 20s, there were several of those moments of clarity that people talk about where you wake up the next day and you're just like, wow, I just spent $500. What is wrong with me? Why did I do that? And it's not that it happened one time. It was like I would do that and then I'd like wake up full of remorse, hating myself, suffering from depression from doing that, and really, like I said, I had a good, moral compass. I knew what I'd done was wrong and I had all this regret. But the closer I got to Friday, the more my brain would go right back to thinking, I can't wait to get paid, and then I would do it again. And once I started, I could not stop. If it's funny being in, recovery as long as I've been in recovery, if you need to understand addiction, crack cocaine will explain it to you real quick. I don't know anybody that's like, I just did one, I mean, I got some leftover crack. Would you like some? That just, I never heard that my whole life.
No.
But I had these moments of clarity, and I probably should have paid attention to them clearer. But eventually, my best friend got murdered at a club, and I was already really in deep into the drug game. I was in pretty deep with the violence on the streets. Things were escalating. These are punk clubs. Yeah, this is going back quite some time, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm saying that's golden era of punk.
Absolutely,
that's a good time.
I missed $3 to $7 shows.
Oh yeah, were you in Maryland by that point, or still down in North
No,
Carolina?
I'm going to get to that. Promise.
Okay.
That's definitely a huge chunk of this story. But the reason why I brought up, his murder is when he died, I didn't have any coping skills at that point. My answer to every emotional event in my life up to that point, even like as a kid, had been negative. Really young, I had lots of people die in my life that were close to me, and nobody ever took the time to like sit me down and be like, "Hey, this is the healthy way to deal with this. Why don't we talk about it? Why don't you, tell me, what's going on in your mind, and like let's do something healthy with it." I never got that, and I'm not faulting anybody, but I lacked the ability to, it's a great quote from one of the programs out there, is that, learning how to live life on life's terms. Yeah. And nobody ever really kind of clued me in to how to do that.
Yeah. That didn't come with the crack.
No, definitely not. No, I mean, I found a way to anesthetize every feeling I ever had, and ran with it. Like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but I mean, so many people that I've talked to over the years, that's pretty much like, that's why they used, is it enabled them to get through either a tragic moment. It helped them deal with anxiety, you name it. I know alcohol was one of my favorite things. Like, it's so funny. I went on so many interviews, like job interviews, and I'd be so nervous before I went in that I would drink like a pint of vodka and then go into the interview. And I'd be like, wow, I aced that thing. It's like, because I looked great on paper, I had on like the outfit and everything, but it never dawned on me I reeked of vodka the whole time I was in there. And then I'd be like surprised that I didn't get the job. Like, what's wrong with these people? Don't they know that I'm like the best employee ever, And
I'd like to be a fly on the wall and see that, because I'm sure it was hilarious.
It had to be. Had to be. So I remember getting one time I got lost on the way out. Like I took a wrong turn. Like I ended up like just lost in their office. So, but going back to that event, when that happened, I kind of gave up on life. I just was like, fuck the world. I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. Yep. And that started me on this like really bad spiral of a combination of opiates and LSD. Mm-hmm. And my goal, I still remember that. My goal was to basically just become emotionally, catatonic. I just didn't want to feel anymore. Yep. And I thought, I'd heard, hey, if you take enough acid, it fries your brain. I was like, what? Let's see what happens. Yeah. And unfortunately, that did not happen. I'm not going to say that I'm not crispy from that event.
Well, probably, fortunately, that didn't happen.
But, true.
Yes.
But I did not get the result that I was looking for. Yeah. And I ran. I started traveling. You said, how did I get to Maryland? I left North Carolina, went to New York, went to New Jersey. I'd be on a bus and somebody just look at me and be like, hey, do you smoke crack? I'm like, what have I got written on my forehead? How did you know that I smoke? Yeah, I'm like on a bus.
Like a Greyhound or just like the bus?
Just like the metro system bus. Okay. I'm just kind of tooling around. Actually, at the time, I think I was putting in job applications around the city, like kind of in and out. Like I would take the bus from Jersey into Port Authority, kind of look for a job there. Mm-hmm. And, I'd meet somebody and they'd be like, hey, you smoke? And I thought at first I was like, he's probably talking about weed. He's like, no, man, I smoke crack. And it's like, I'm like, okay, Yeah. And ironically, everywhere I went, I was with me, my same desire to fit in, to be able to do whatever you were doing, I was going to do just so that we could be friends, And I was a social butterfly. Growing up, that whole life of the party thing because of sales, coming out of high school and being that guy, I love the attention. I liked feeling important. Yep. And, that I carried that with me everywhere I went. I eventually landed in Washington, D.C. My sister lived here at the time. And, broke, coming off a tour. I'd done a couple of little small stints of like doing roadie work and, yeah, I had nothing. I had nowhere to go. So I crashed on her floor and, she kind of told me, hey, you need to clean up your act. I'm like, no, I am. I'm only going to drink. I'm just going to drink. And that was, I knew, I knew narcotics were bad. There was no doubt in my mind. We all went to the DARE program and whatever health classes. So, you couldn't really grow up. Yeah. I don't think you can at all anymore without hearing the message that drugs are bad. Yeah.
This is your brain on drugs.
Right. Even South Park, Yeah. So, I knew that I really needed to move away from that. And that probably lasted, maybe 2-3 weeks. Tops.
I thought you were going to say 2-3 years. I was like,
No,
good for you.
No. Like I said, I mean, everywhere I went, like, I got a job at a restaurant. By that time, I was already at a point where I didn't really have too many marketable skills. I mean, I had done construction, I had done restaurant work, things like that. But, I was a high school dropout.
Yep.
And then, I got a job in this restaurant and I was like, okay, this is cool. And guess what? You get 2 shift drinks, So,
nice.
you're sitting at the bar, I'm making friends, I know how to do this. I know how to relate to people over alcohol. And then, I meet you and you're like, hey, you want to go smoke a joint? I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
So that cycle started again. Eventually I was no longer welcome at my sister's house. She was like, you need to go. There's so many events, but, I realize this podcast has somewhat limited time, so I'm not going to get into every negative story that I could tell you. But ultimately, my drinking and my drug use, affected my relationship with my sister at that point. It affected the relationship with my brother-in-law. They had just recently gotten married. And the last thing that she needed was to try and convince her new husband that, hey, you should give my drunk drug addict brother-in-law a chance, While I was there, I stole CDs from him. I stole money from him. I never, I stole food out of the fridge. I like that sense of entitlement. Like, if you were dumb enough to leave leftovers in the fridge, they were going to be gone. They were mine, like you didn't eat it. So, and I never felt any remorse whatsoever for doing those things. And, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me was her kind of putting that out there, like, you can't be here anymore. I would love to tell you that that's when I got introduced to recovery, but that's not what happened. Met some other people like myself. None of us were allowed in other people's homes, so we pooled our money somehow and got like a little crappy apartment. I got another restaurant job at a pool hall. I had to edit this just a little bit in my head. I was approached by somebody that came to that establishment and they were like, hey, do you think you can sell cocaine? I'm like, yeah, of course I can sell cocaine, because in that setting, I was the social butterfly. I knew all of the customers, all the barflies. So I absolutely, and he set me up and within days had done all the cocaine and realized that I could no longer go back to work because he was going to want his money. Within, I don't know, I probably laid out of work for 2 days trying to figure out what I was going to do. Made a little bit more money doing something else and proceeded to OD on cocaine, That's a rare one. You don't hear that too much anymore because of the opioid crisis in America. But I basically injected myself with too much cocaine. The people that I was around decided to take me outside. Miraculously, I came to, at that point, whenever I used cocaine, I got very depressed after the fact. That was just the effect. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm only gonna speak for myself here. Maybe other people didn't experience that, but like the depression afterwards and the fact that I had almost died, was literally killing me mentally. I had survived it physically, but mentally I was just a wreck. I went to my sister's house, banged on the door and just basically fell apart. Emotionally I was a wreck. I kind of held her hostage. You know what I mean? She was supposed to go to work. I was like, if you leave, I'm going to kill myself, because it was a really screwed up, one of those moments of clarity. I knew that I needed help and I didn't know how to get it. And she was the only person I could think of to reach out to. And so I ended up, this is really quick, and I got a really funny story, man. I called. She's like, you need to call the suicide hotline. So I was like, okay, all right. Because, I knew that I needed to know what resources were available to me. So I called the suicide hotline, and I tell them everything that's going on with me. And they put me on fucking hold. And I'm not talking for like 20 seconds. Like I was on hold and she walked into the kitchen and I'm still on hold. And I don't, it's been a very long time ago, but like maybe 8 minutes went by.
Oh my God.
And I finally hung up and I'm laughing. I mean, I just busted out laughing.
Yeah.
And she comes in and she's like, what is so funny? I was like, well, how do they know I didn't have a handgun or something? Like who in their right mind puts somebody, I call in, I'm suicidal. I'm a drug addict. I need help. I don't know what to do. And could you please hold?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I'm not,
I have no words for that. That's crazy.
That's not the right way to go about suicide. Okay, just hold for a second.
Yeah. Right. I'm like, I thought you guys were like trained or anyway. I'm sorry. I find that it was so amusing to me at the time, but it added enough levity that I talked with my sister and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go get help. And my idea of help was I went right back to the neighborhood that I OD'd in and I bought some more cocaine and I OD'd again. This time I woke up at Holy Cross Hospital. And I come to, and it's amazing because, like I said, I grew up, Cub Scouts is at church. I had a little bit of experience with church and stuff. I think, my mom and my grandmother made us go. So I come to, and I'm surrounded by this bright white light.
I see where this is going.
Bright white light. I'm like, uh-oh. And I'm on my back, right? So I know that I'm laying down, but that's about the only thing that I can feel, And I'm laying back, bright white light, and then these two nuns lean in. And I'm like, they're like huge penguins, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And I start freaking because I know everything that I have done in the last, several years, and none of it's good. I mean, I didn't commit all the sins, but I definitely put a dent in a few of them. Yeah. And I'm like, wow. And in my head, I'm like, wow, I'm not gonna be here long. As soon as they check my ID, just like everywhere else, I'm not really welcome here either. Yeah. And the one nun, she put her hand on my shoulder and she says, "It's okay. You're not where you think you are." Because I know she knew, So that really is.
You're not going there.
No. I was like, where's the elevator? I mean, because I'm definitely not staying here. So that started my introduction to recovery. That overdose, they transported me to another facility, which, my God, it's funny. The longer you're out there and the more facilities you go through, you literally can write a book on the experiences you have in these facilities. Oh, yeah. I've been told, because I've shared stories with, several people, including yourself, that, I really should write a book about that. But that facility held me for 30 days, and then I got sent to another facility for 30 days or 28 days. Yeah. And it was the first time that I'd ever had everything out of my system, and I was completely lost. I was anxious, definitely, scared to death. Number one, let me back up. I told you I was like in North Carolina, did some traveling around, but this was, they took me from a suburb of Washington, D.C. and decided to put me in Baltimore City to get clean. So
that's ironic.
Yeah. And I knew where I was. I was like, are you guys out of your minds? Like, I have like a drug problem, but you just like falling out of the frying pan into the fire, like, what are you talking about? And luckily one of the administrators happened to like be there, and they just clued me into the fact that it's like, Baltimore does have a major drug problem, but this area has like one of the strongest recovery networks that you could ever ask for. There's more meetings than, I think maybe California or New York rival us, maybe, but I think it's, it's amazing around here. Oh yeah. It's here if you want it. Yep. But, I took all of the suggestions that this facility made. I changed everything about my life. I paid attention to the people I hung around with. I wasn't working in any bars. I stayed away from working in restaurants. Didn't need any more shift drinks, Yeah. And by going to, meetings, by changing who I was hanging around with, I managed to get 4 years, and it went by rather quickly, to be honest with you. I did not change anything internally. And To me, this is really important because I tell a lot of people that I work with, that if you're not going to change anything, then you're probably going to find yourself right back in the same situation. And my story is that, I went into a rehab facility. I was given the information that I was after, but I didn't follow through, and I didn't really learn how to have fun without the use of drugs. Growing up as a kid, teenager, early adulthood, obviously, like so many of us go to clubs, go to shows, and it really all does kind of revolve around drugs. It's sad to say that. I mean, I can say today that I've been to a lot of concerts and they're more amazing to me today because I can actually hear everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm actually paying attention to the musicians, the vocals, the lights, just everything is just so much better. But I couldn't comprehend that in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, life's over. What am I going to do for fun? Another experience that I had at that time was I had never been in a relationship sober before, even I think back, like say like 13, 14, 15, I hadn't even kissed a girl without having something in me, whether it was like beer or pot, like back when it was kind of like the innocent days. I'm not putting needles in my neck at that point, but I would smoke pot, I would drink, and we'd be at a party, and it was just so much easier to like go up and talk to somebody. So I had my first, experience with like talking to someone sober, and I was terrified. I didn't know how to act because I had never done it. Instead of, I look back at like all these like pivotal moments in life that are supposed to be like, life lessons, you know what I mean? Let you get over your fear of talking to a lady, whether it be at a school dance or going to a club. I hate to say club because that's not really a sober setting at all, but I did not experience that. So I tried this like relationship, and it's so funny because she was in the same boat I was, we're looking at each other and it's like, I never had like relations with anyone that wasn't messed up.
Yeah.
It was the oddest thing ever.
Yes.
The most anxiety-ridden experience I think I ever had in my whole life. That probably rivaled the first time I went to court. I was terrified.
Yeah.
But that being said, I never learned how to live life without the use of drugs. And I was in Baltimore City. So I'm surrounded by clubs and bars. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to drink. At that time, I'd started roadieing for, another musician. I had access to all the clubs. I was always on, it was easy to get in because of doing the roadie work. It's like I could easily get on a guest list for anything, know. They knew I didn't drink. So it was really weird because they're like, you sure? I mean, the first time I did it, the first drink I had was not at a club where someone knew me. It was at a place that I roadied. And I told my friend, I was just like, I really want to drink a beer. And he knew that I was in recovery and that I was, that I had a problem. And he's like, well, how long's it been since you drank a beer? I was like, 4 years, man. He's like, you're all right. It's been 4 years, I'm like, and the best part, he's like, I'll keep an eye on you. I won't let anything happen. I'm like, so he co-signed, that BS of like, and I even told him, I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm an addict, man. Bad things happen. And, I'm like, I shouldn't drink, I did, I went into the club. And I was going to have one beer. I did. I had a Molson. I still remember it. It's like, whatever. It was just what I wanted. Yeah, fair enough. Don't be judgmental. But the thing was, I drank that one and I immediately ordered another one.
Yep.
So even then, when I thought I'm just going to have one beer because I knew it was working, that I needed to finish up. Nope, had two. The worst thing that could have happened that night. Absolutely nothing.
Yep. I
went home. I got up the next morning. Obviously 2 beers. I didn't have a hangover. Everything was great. So the next night I had another roadie gig. I was like, okay, well, see, these people that are in recovery don't know. They don't know me. They don't know what's going on. I got this. I understand. I can't do narcotics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Cocaine's bad. I can't do that. But I can smoke pot. I can drink beer.
Yep.
And so I started doing that. The girl that I was dating at the time did the exact same thing, and that relationship quickly fell apart because both of us were every night we're at sometimes the same bar, sometimes not. You know, she started having, going out on her own. I started going out on my own. That led to, trust issues in the relationship because I didn't, the more I drank, the more, I started to creep back. Yeah. Like, I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. I was jealous of friends, like literal friends, that snowballed, quite literally. I started doing cocaine in those roadie jobs because, a lot of those guys were like, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? And I explained that, I try to tell that to other people. Like I said before, I work with a lot of people that are in recovery. And I try to make suggestions to them about what to do, what not to do, what happened with me. And I hate it when I hear, oh, I'm just going to drink, because when in my experience, when I go back to the bar, that's when I run into somebody that has pot and smokes pot. That's when I meet somebody who's like, hey, do you like Percocets? Hey, do you like Xanax? Hey, do you do cocaine?
Yeah,
right. So as soon as I was back in that, I said earlier, I got on that bus in New Jersey and in New York and like I met somebody. I'm like, how did they know? And I think we do know. When we're out there, I can look in your eyes and be like, yeah, Eric, I bet you he'll say yes if I ask him if he wants to go get something,
Yeah.
And it literally that everything that I had built in Baltimore completely fell apart. I had met more people, of course, being the social butterfly that I was. And I'd always heard about this wonderful heroin that Baltimore has. I had never partaken in this amazing product that Baltimore possesses. Yeah, man. So, I asked him to get me some. And I lied to him like a good addict. And he's like, you sure? And I'm like, oh, no, I got a band coming in. There's a band that really wants it. And I told him, it's such a bull. Okay, I immediately revert back to all the paranoid thinking from doing coke and drinking all the time. Then, I immediately start lying, making up like
it's
these
on the band's
elaborate
rider.
stories.
It's cool.
Yeah. I'm like, no, it's not for me. It's not for me.
Yeah. They want some scramble and they're not talking about eggs.
Right. So, that started it. And I quickly, got right into having a habit, lost my place to live because I was no longer paying, rent. Everything was going in my arm. And it took me 10 years, honestly, like there were moments, throughout those 10 years. And I say moments because from that point on, I didn't stop really. I went to a couple methadone clinics, the methadone clinics, out of like 2,000 clients, I was the only one that was administered a breathalyzer every morning. Like they smelled booze on me because I wasn't shooting dope. You know what I mean? Like the methadone kept me away from the needle and shooting dope, but I would drink, smoke pot and do coke all night long. And I thought I was okay. I was like, this is great. This is the best thing that ever happened. It's like, I can get fucked up, but there's no real repercussions, I'm not going to be sick. I'm not throwing up in the morning. I can go to work. I bought into, the things that you hear at these places, Now, I'll be the first one to tell anybody, whatever your journey is for you to get clean, do it. You know what I mean? If methadone keeps you from sticking the needle in your arm, I'm all for it, you know? But it didn't work for me. Because I didn't stop doing everything else. I wasn't in recovery. I don't see that as being in recovery because I wasn't changing anything. I still was going to bars. I was still smoking weed, still, like I said, all of those things. And eventually, when I think the first time that I didn't take the methadone and I went back to Baltimore to get heroin was a snowstorm. Like we, pile in the car, drive to the methadone clinic, and being a good addict, I'll drive a car in 2 feet of snow, 3 feet of snow, no problem. On a donut, no less. But I get there and it's closed. So there's a whole parking lot full of people standing around like lemmings, like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And it's like, somebody's like, well, I'm going to Baltimore. Okay. And that just started, that was like the spark of a wildfire in that parking lot. Because you had like, in the morning was normally the working people, and everybody just piled into cars and just followed each other to Baltimore. There's probably like, I'd say at least good 30, 40 people all went to the same spot in Baltimore to get what they needed so that they could go to work. It really wasn't about, hey, let's go get high, but that fear of being dope sick again, just, it came back to rule your life like it always does. And at that point, I was just like, well, I've already used, I might as well just keep using. And I did, went to a couple of rehabs, lost jobs, lost relationships, got relationships. Ironically, I married somebody just like me, she didn't run away because she used like I used, and it was a great codependent relationship. Whenever I had money for her, that was great. Whenever she had money for me, it was great. We didn't see anything wrong with being, two heroin addicts just living life, loving each other, It's like not some twisted Sid and Nancy bullshit, So that went on for quite a while, and I knew I had a problem. I knew that I basically like reopened, that
Pandora's box.
Yeah, but there's nothing pretty about this.
No.
Everything that I had heard about from other using addicts in that 10-year span, all of my nevers came true. Like, oh, I'm never gonna do that. I'm not gonna be homeless. Shit, that happened quick. I'm not gonna like be a thief. To make a living. That all of these things that I didn't think was gonna happen to me happened, and it just quickly got worse.
Oh yeah.
In the end, of that run, I no longer had the ability to pay rent anywhere. I still worked somehow. I managed to keep a job the whole time. That was one of the, I'm grateful that it happened now, looking back on it. But eventually, the last 2 years of my using, I lived in a tent. And I bathed maybe once a month if I was lucky, because where I was at, it was $10 to take a shower at a truck stop, So, at this point, I got like one big dreadlock on the back of my head. I had hair to my butt. It was ugly, And by this time, I was starting to have the health issues. I had abscesses. I had infected, wounds on me. I had really bad decayed teeth, it's sad. Like I even got kicked off the Neal Exchange program. How bad of an addict have you got to be for them to tell you get the fuck out of the truck and don't come back? I don't remember exactly what I did. I wish I did, but those years are very, very, very foggy. But I found the card that they give you the other day, and it's covered in soot from sitting spoons on it in the tent. You know what I mean? Because you need like a solid surface. So it's still covered with soot, and I kept that card, because it's like a really strong reminder. It's like, this is where this is where you go, not just all the criminal activity, not just all the broken family and friendships, it takes me to a place where I just don't care about being alive. The last 2 years, like I said, living in a tent, I finally reached a point where I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I didn't think about recovery. I thought about suicide. I just wanted off the planet. I didn't want to feel the way I wanted to feel. I was tired of, paying for Suboxone at these clinics. I was tired of going to rehabs. I was tired of like going to methadone clinics. I just wanted it to fucking end. And the best thinking that I had was, I'm going to take my last paycheck. I'll buy a bunch of heroin and I'm just going to OD, So that's what I did. Luckily, I ran into a friend of mine. I really think I would be dead if this hadn't happened the way that it did. He decided, this was in January, and it snowed. It was really cold. He's like, you can't be outside. I lied to him. I said, I'm leaving my wife, because like I had manipulated and lied to him and made it look like it was her fault for everything that was going on in our lives. I was the good guy. But he put me in like a really crappy hotel. Had I OD'd outside, I don't think I would have survived, because of the temperature. Also, I landed on my side. So when I did, I would have aspirated had I landed on my back, I didn't. And I was really pissed off. I woke up and I couldn't believe I was still alive. So I used the heroin that I had left to try and do it again. Another sick, twisted, good thing is that my tolerance had gotten to a point where I couldn't get enough heroin in a normal insulin syringe. I had been like occasionally using the bigger ones because you can get more stuff in them. That's not a brag thing. It's just, like the longevity of using, obviously you need more and more and more to get well. It wasn't that the product was bad. It was just, same people I've been dealing with for years, tried it again, landed on my side, luckily between the tub and the toilet at this place, right? I get up. There's the maid is screaming because there's blood and some other stuff, like overdose is not pretty, So I run past her because being the great addict that I am, like, I don't want to get arrested. That was the only thing that went through my mind. It wasn't that hey, you're suicidal. Hey, you almost died. So I ran past her. Ran up the highway for a little while, didn't run far. I weighed about 140 pounds and I just freaking OD'd. I didn't have a whole lot of energy left. Friend pulls up. I'm actively looking at like tractor trailers thinking, hey, I'll just jump under one of these things. That'll work. Somebody that I'd worked with that was a friend pulled up and he said, are you all right? Here's the best moment of clarity. I said, no, I'm not all right. I said, would you take me to a hospital? And that was 11 years ago. I remember the seed had been planted that there is a better way to live than being an addict. You don't have to live by that, once a junkie, always a junkie mentality. And I really adopted that mentality on maintenance drugs. I didn't think that I would ever be anything but a drug addict. Taking that ride to the hospital, he was young. He's probably like 17, 18 years old. And I just told him, I said, I know you very well. I know you drink. I know you smoke pot. I was like, don't ever fucking do anything else. And that was like the last thing I could, think of to say. Cause like I was a mess, abscesses, bad teeth, I just OD'd. I had like bodily fluids on me and I'm trying to be as clean as I can. But it was a really nasty experience,
I'm sure.
And all I could think of to do was like, man, what advice can I give this kid? It's like, just don't do hard drugs. Don't, and I'm not condoning pot and alcohol. But I hope I did. I hope it woke him up, or it's like, hey, I look up to these guys, like, oh, I want to be like them, because I fell into that trap too as a kid. But, I got to the hospital and they stabilized me and I started this whole process over again. And it was a long journey for me. I had a long way to come back. And the best thing that I can tell anybody seeking recovery is like, take some suggestions from people, because that's the only reason I'm still alive. Like when I was in the hospital, they're like, it took them 2 weeks to stabilize me to send me to another facility, to fatten me up a little bit, deal with the infections and things of that nature. But once I got there, ironically, I was right back at the very first rehab I ever went to, the one that worked before. People look at me like, well, if it worked, you would have. I'm saying it worked for 4 years. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I never wanted to go back, but I was never so happy to see that building. And once again, they told me the same thing. Hey, when you get out, get around some people that are trying to do the same thing that you are. Change. Or you're going to be right back where you were, And I personally, I did go down, the route of going a 12-step program. I think that for me, it was the best thing that I could do. I opened up to another human being. They kind of clued me into like, what I needed to do, what I needed to stop doing, and I owe that gentleman my life, for him trusting me. There were like such little silly moments. Like, after knowing him for like maybe 6 months, he gave me the code to his house. He's like, hey, will you feed my cat? I'm like, do you know who I am? He's like, because I had shared with him like a lot of my history, and he's just like, I trust you, you're not that same person anymore. I can see that you're trying to do something different. And I'm like, less than, 8 months earlier, if somebody would give me the code to their house while they were going on vacation.
You getting robbed.
Yeah. I didn't even trust myself. Like, it was really weird because I'm in his house and I'm like, I'm nervous, because I didn't have enough trust in myself not to do something stupid.
Yeah.
So bottom line for me was, I needed help to sort through everything that was true about myself and what was untrue. That narrative that was in my head when I got clean, that I was just a piece of shit. And I'm like, once a junkie, always a junkie, that, I'm no good. I needed help, I could not do it on my own. I think there's luckily, today there are a lot of different ways that you can get help. And I'm down with all of them, to be honest with you.
100%.
Anything is better than continuing down that path. The climate that we're in now, if you're addicted to opiates, the odds of you surviving are getting slimmer and slimmer. Where I live, it's like I'm literally, I'm actually shopping for a new suit because I've gone to so many funerals and like you can only dry clean them so much. I mean, that sounds so silly, but it's the truth. And I'm so tired of like seeing the pain in parents' eyes, getting that phone call, getting that hug, standing beside a casket that has somebody you used to like spend time with. It's heartbreaking to see this, but I'm grateful that I get to see that because, I was oblivious to the pain I put my mom through, my friends through. I thought I was only hurting myself all those years. Nobody cared.
Yeah, the victimless crime idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, things have gotten incredibly good for me, and I don't mean materialist, like in a material way. It's like, I have some stuff, but it's like, I'm not one of those people who's gonna be like, oh, I got a Mercedes, I got a car, I got the house, I got this. What I have is like, I'm content with my life. I'm really happy with where I'm at now. I wake up and I don't look in the mirror and hate what I see. I don't wake up and like regret everything that I did the night before. I have a lot of friends that that I talk to, that I know I can trust, that I can reach out to. They can reach out to me. The overwhelming majority of people in my life are in recovery. I have normal friends today. I call them normies. Like they're those people that are capable, like going to a cookout, maybe drinking a few beers, but they understand and respect where I'm at. I'm totally open with people. I think that's hilarious. People are like, well, what do you do when somebody offers you a drink? And I just tell them, I don't drink. There's no big mystery to this. You don't have to give this big elaborate explanation. Just no thanks.
Just say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how like decent human beings, little bunny ears, decent human beings don't pressure you to drink with them. Alcoholics and addicts, they don't like drinking alone, and they don't like but
misery loves company.
Absolutely, but I've been able to, I don't know, I changed everything about myself and finally became the man that I was always meant to be. And that's what I tell the people that I work with. The young men that I work with in recovery, I tell them, that if you give yourself the opportunity, every dream you ever had can happen, can come to fruition. You can accomplish anything, and I've seen so many people that, low bottom dope fiends, quote unquote, that have been able to like go to school, get jobs that they really wanted, be able to restore their lives to a level that they never even considered. So I don't know. There is hope. I was listening to your opening statement that, what's your goal with this podcast? And, I would, just basically echo the exact same thing, man. Is that if you feel like you have a problem and that your life is just hopeless and worthless, it's that I was there. I actively wanted to die.
Yeah, we all were.
I remember praying many times. I'm going to go backwards for 1 second. I remember several times that there were other addicts that I used to use with. In the mornings we'd shoot dope together and stuff, and they didn't like being around me because I actually, most people don't pray when they're using narcotics. And I'm not a religious person, but I would say something like, God, I hope this one kills me. And people were like, you are sick, man.
I'm fucking like, bummer, dude.
Yeah, they didn't like that. But I mean, that's where I was at in definitely within the last year. Every time I shot dope, I was like really praying that I would just not wake up from it because it's just how bad my life had gotten. And I didn't think it would ever get that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm freaking Cub Scout. You know what I mean? Like, I actually had decent grades at one point. I didn't think, sneaking off to go smoke weed and drink beer, I didn't think I would ever end up, in Baltimore, in New York, in New Jersey, constantly looking for, the next way for me to feel okay. And it wasn't even feel high anymore. It was just to feel okay to get through the day. So, it's, I don't know. Give yourself a chance, man. You can find help. It's out here. I don't know whether you guys do, links and stuff like that. But it's like, if you have a computer and you're listening to this podcast, do a little bit more research. There's so many different.
Oh yeah, podcastrecovery.com. We have all of our. We have links to all sorts of avenues. We have definitely several hotlines, like they're out
Different
there.
fellowships.
Different fellowships.
There'll be more to come.
Oh,
Always.
Yeah. They're available.
Yeah. So great share, Herb.
Yeah, fantastic.
So we're gonna go through a few questions, kind of go a little back and forth.
right.
Some of our standards, and then some that I just picked up along the way. But let's stick with the standard question first. You kind of mentioned this in the beginning, where you were talking about ways that addiction manifested itself first for you, which I've listening to people share. That's actually something a lot of people touch on. Is that first way of where addiction manifests itself?
Once you get clean.
Well, yeah.
Both really.
Both, yeah. So what I'm trying to is, what do you feel is the one that has really shown itself? Not your this past 11 years. What like whether it's gambling, whether it's sex, whether it might be something else. What do you feel like addiction has like really presented itself as like
In recovery or
recovery?
In recovery, my biggest one was retail therapy. I managed to dig myself a good credit card debt hole.
Yeah.
That's a common one.
Because whenever if I was in a relationship and I wasn't feeling really comfortable, I could go buy something and make myself feel great. And it was almost like crack too, because like I'd have remorse. I'd be like,
buyer's
damn,
remorse.
I just bought a $300 pair of boots.
I don't need those.
Yeah. But I could justify it, But that's probably the most common one. And to be perfectly honest, it's like that's what I'm digging myself out of in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I've been able to reel that in. I'm not spending like I was, cut up the cards, paid off cards. Took lower interest loans to pay it off. And here's how I did that. I want to touch on that. Is I reached out to somebody else. I got honest with somebody and said, hey, I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. My disease is manifesting in shopping and I want what I want when I want it again. I didn't get high, but good God, I spent $5,000 that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I didn't care, my first credit card was 24% interest. It was that one, you know what I mean? And I'm like dumb enough, I shouldn't say dumb enough, but I mean, I didn't care about the repercussions of my actions. So that was definitely my disease coming out.
Finance is hard too.
Yeah.
With especially credit cards and you can easily just keep swiping.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, I have the money, but you don't really
You
have
don't.
the money.
You don't.
It's
not there.
All right, so, okay, being a relapser, as you can see on the wall right there, we're on round 3. So something that I feel was essential in my process is, I feel like the first relapse was super essential to get me off the path that recovery had taken me to that point. And I feel like the last relapse was essential to get me into a middle ground of where I am now.
Okay.
Do you feel like your relapse was essential to kind of put you on the path you are today? Besides obviously it was, but do you feel like you wouldn't be the person you are today without that relapse?
I would say absolutely. I actually, I just reconnected with someone that I grew up with, used drugs with, and sold drugs with. I removed myself from her life. We met at 16. I disappeared at 23. I disappeared. I left,
The original 1980s ghosting.
Yeah. But I left behind a couple thousand friends, I told you I was a social butterfly, did shows and things like that, roadied. I disappeared. I didn't, this is pre, social media and stuff. I just left and I reconnected with this person and, we both are in agreement that that had to happen. Number one, I think if we'd stayed together, we'd both be dead. But I don't really have any regrets. Everything that helped me, as all the horrible things that I saw in active addiction, all the horrible things that I did in active addiction, helped me be able to understand and help other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I said, I work with a lot of young men, and there's literally there's literally nothing they can come to me with that I haven't seen or done. And that being said, that since I've been through so much stuff, that's enabled me to help people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they come at me and they're like, you know, embarrassed to tell me what they've done and what they've been through, you know, I can share with them and just be like, you know, I did the same thing, you know, or I can even, you know, give them an example of something that I did worse to kind of help lessen their guilt and their fear about talking with somebody else about this. And, you know, I absolutely would not be who I am had I not gone through everything that I did. You know, I said earlier, you know, I'm 4 for 4 on doing like rescues and stuff. And I'm hoping I don't have to do it ever again. That'd
Absolutely.
be great. But the thing is, you know, the fact that I did it, you know, like you were there and you drop, you know, I'm like, thank God, you know, thank God I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout and I learned CPR.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Thank God that I'm not going to leave you. You know, I met so many people. They're like, oh shit, let's get out of here. I've been that guy, you know, where I was the only one left. And I'm like, there's a body on the floor. What am I going to do? I did CPR, you know. It's made me, you know, I don't want to say callous, but it's like I can go through a lot of stuff, you know, and kind of hold it together, you know. I don't know if that totally answers that question, you know.
No,
but,
yeah. I'm kind of like segueing. You kind of have a good segue there. You talked about your friend being murdered. And like we've all lost close friends, and you know, through whatever addiction and drugs and all that stuff. How do you manage grief? You know, obviously grief when you're using, you go deeper. But how do you manage grief now? And do you like, you know, one of the things I remember when I quit cigarettes is I kind of took the 5 stages of grief and I applied them to different things. So if I'm like going to quit something, I try to take the 5 stages of grief to that. Like, so how do you manage your grief now?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
Well, I'm a hair apprehensive because I don't like to like endorse anything. But I can only answer that honestly. After getting into recovery, I got exposed to, you know, the need to have a spiritual path in my life. I don't believe in God. You know, I'll put that out there, and a lot of people are like, you don't believe in God? What do you mean? Buddhism worked for me. You know, let me be brutally honest, you know, is that I basically started meditating and studying Buddhism early in recovery. And I found that it really kind of like, it really complemented what I was trying to do. You know, like what it's about worked great with where I was trying to get. The information that I was exposed to in my studies really kind of helped me understand life on life's terms, you know? All I can say, you know, I'm not going to we don't have enough time to go all into that, but, you know, just to touch on that, you know, through meditation, through, you know, doing some research, going and involving myself actively in Buddhism helped me immensely, you know, because never in my life had I like really actually taken the time to figure out what felt right to me, what worked for me, you know, like there's so many belief systems out here. Like I think I Googled it one time. It's like hundreds of thousands of different things that people believe in, you know, and, you know, all I ever heard was what was forced on me. You know, it's like, oh, you're Episcopalian or you're this or whatever. You know, I'm just pulling that one out of the air. But, you know, I never took the time to like figure out like what works for me. So how do I deal with grief is that I tap into my spiritual belief, but I also have learned to like talk with people. You know, I go to people that I know that I can count on, that I can tell them, you know, man, my heart is just, it feels like it got ripped out of my freaking chest. And it has on multiple occasions. I got a phone call one morning, laying in bed, phone rings, I wake up. It's a hysterical woman on the phone. The only reason I know who it is because it was someone I was working with. It was their mother. And so I had his number, and I pick up the phone, and she's just hysterical. She's like, he's blue. What do I do? And I'm like, you know, I just woke up, you know, and I'm like, take a deep breath. You got to calm down. You got to let me go. What you need to do is, as soon as you hang up the phone, dial 911. You got to start doing CPR on him.
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, he's so cold. He's so cold. And, I told her, I said, you have to hang up the phone with me. You have to do this. You can't stay on the phone with me. You got to call the paramedics. So I hung up. It was like the hardest thing I ever did, really, is to hang up on somebody like that. Oh. But then I'm sitting in my bedroom with all of those emotions, that this 23-year-old kid, his mother just called me and she said he's cold. Cold's not good. No. Finding your kid OD'd is one thing, but if they're ice cold, that means it's been a while,
Yeah.
That haunted me for a long time. Her voice saying those words, and I've shared that, I've done eulogies at people's funerals, and other young men have died 24, 27, and I repeat it, because I want, usually at these funerals, there's people of the same age group and stuff, and I really want to do that. The last one I did, I know I made everybody there cry, and I made everybody laugh, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. That's another whole long story, but, dealing with all of it. Mm-hmm. Being there for one another, learning how to connect with another human being and tell them, I don't care, I don't care who you are, what you are. I have enough compassion in my heart to listen to you, when you need help, and I've found other men and women that are living the same life that I am that will do that for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could go on and on and on. You guys both know me. I'm like a long-winded guy. And it's so hard to give like a short, concise answer to a question like that. But there's a multitude of things that I do. But finding a spiritual path that really helps me, is instrumental. People, that I can trust and reach out to in those times of need, whether it's a phone call, whether it's like calling you and say, hey man, I'm really just deep in these feelings, man. Could you meet me for coffee? Can we go hang out? Can I come over?
Yeah.
It's important. You're not alone. If you're going to try and do this alone, God, I don't know if it can be done.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, So.
No, I hear that.
I want to touch on the grief coping skills. I am going to try and do a concise job though. Basically, how I've learned to deal with grief is pretty much do the exact opposite of what is happening, especially with death. Like, I'm dealing with a death, therefore I'm going to embrace life. Right. Just like, it's really just piggybacking off what you said, is like really just get in touch with as many people as I possibly can, and really like let people know that you love them. Like, don't let those moments escape you. Right. And because like not everybody dies from overdoses or stuff like that. Like I've had friends that are murdered. Like, crazy shit happens. We're a fragile people. So just, I try not to let those opportunities to let people know that I love them get away from me. And one of the biggest quotes that like has always stuck in my mind is like, don't be sad that it's gone, be happy that it happened.
Oh yeah.
So really it's about like keeping a perspective in my own mind that I'm glad I got to have this person in my life for a year, 10 years, whatever. Because I wouldn't be sad if it wasn't good at one point.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So that's my clear, concise answer.
All right. Well, I think we're about done.
We're about out of time?
Yeah, we're about out of time.
All right. Well, I would like to thank Herb for a great share tonight, man. We appreciate you coming by.
Great.
You did a great job, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. Please like us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, check out our website, podcastrecovery.com. You can listen to these episodes like Herb's fantastic episode. And
please rate, review, subscribe.
Check us out on Apple Podcast or
Google Play,
Google
or
Play, Stitcher,
anywhere you get your
Castbox.
podcast.
We'll be in whores right now, but that's okay.
It's fine.
And share us with your friends. Stay safe out there. Stay clean. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.